Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it's brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. This hour of the show is brought to you by PropSwap. Download the PropSwap app today or go to PropSwap.com. Andrew DiCecco from Inside the Birds and the Inside the Birds podcast. He is here today for today's edition of Football at 4. So much to dive into. We want to see what Andrew's thoughts were on week number 1. Some of the things that stood out to him. It was a dominant performance, Andrew. I don't know that too many people thought it was going to be that dominant. I know you picked the Eagles to win the game, but was this a case of Eagles look good or Atlanta that bad?
Well, I certainly didn't see that sort of offensive onslaught from the Eagles, Mike. But what I will say is the Eagles just really executed, and it was clear from the early goings after they sort of settled in the running game against Mike Davis and found a solution for Calvin Ridley. I think it became very apparent that the Eagles were the better football team. And like I said on your show last week, they're stronger in the trenches on both sides, and that's ultimately where the game is won. And I think that that's going to be the Eagles' hallmark throughout the season. If they can really get pressure from the defensive line and they can really keep a healthy offensive line in front of Jalen Hurts and have a little continuity there, they're going to win some football games because they have a good blend of veteran upside or veteran experience and young upside to really get some things going there. So it was a fun game to watch because they were just dominant on both sides. Yeah,
I mean, we talked a lot in the offseason about that offensive line and if they can stay healthy, but really a dominant performance. And that came from a line that had a lot of penalties. I mean, this game could have been even worse had the penalties been kind of cleaned up. And I think, Andrew, I want to get your opinion on this, that's an area where you shouldn't be so concerned because those penalties were coming from veteran players.
Yeah, exactly. And Nick Sirianni has mentioned this after the game, and he mentioned it yesterday as well. Take care of the things that require no talent, and that is being diligent in making sure you're cleaning up on those penalties, and a lot of them are from veteran players. That's easy to fix. It's when you have a talent deficiency and things of that nature that you really can't – you have a hard time masking that. But I think that, cleaning up penalties from a veteran player like a Lane Johnson, I could say Malu had a couple that were a little bit egregious. I mean, you're right. It could have very easily have been into the 40s. I mean, they were that dominant. So, I mean, those are easy things to clean up. And they're really going to have to with the 49ers coming to Philadelphia this weekend.
Yeah, we'll dive into that a bit. I want to get your thoughts. I know over at Inside the Birds, you really zoned in. Miles Sanders, I thought, had an underrated good game. But how about the way that Nick Sirianni utilized his running backs in general? What kind of, clues did you get about the way he's going to use these guys this year from week number 1?
Well, the first big clue was Saturday afternoon when they didn't make any moves by 4 o'clock and by promoting Jordan Howard to the active roster. When they didn't do that, I sort of had an idea that that they were obviously going to roll in with those 3 running backs. But I thought, Mike, that it was going to be Miles Sanders and Boston Scott that were going to shoulder most of a load. Now, Boston Scott didn't see any offensive snaps. He saw 12 snaps on special teams. He wasn't even the kick returner, which was a little odd. But 47 snaps from Miles Sanders, 25 from the rookie Kenny Gainwell. And what really stood out to me was how he was utilized in the 2-minute offense and really in the red zone. And that tells me that they're very confident in his pass protection, his situational awareness, his ability to catch the football reliably, which Miles Sanders said after the game that he thinks that Kenny Gainwell has the best hands out of anyone in the running back room, which I don't think anyone will argue that. So when you have these different things, and Nick Sirianni said he saw it come together in practice, and when you hear that, something like that, it's consistency. He was stacking together good practices enough so where they felt comfortable putting him in those critical situations. So I think that's going to be a very interesting tandem to watch moving forward. I don't know how Boston Scott will figure into that, but I think right now they have a very complementary 2-headed rushing attack moving forward.
Yeah, Andrew, and it seemed that like in the red zone areas in the 2-minute offense, that Gainwell was kind of the guy they leaned on. Like they trusted him right out of the get-go to be the guy in some key moments there.
Yeah, and like I said, that to me speaks to his situational awareness, his ability to protect the football, catch the football, reliably. He knew how he was, heads up awareness to get out of bounds there.
Yep.
On one of his catches. These are little things that the coaches have seen throughout practice, and they felt comfortable enough putting a rookie in his first NFL game in those very critical situations. So I think that speaks volumes to where Kenny is in his progression, which I didn't think that he was really going to be utilized until the first quarter of the season. I thought that rookie running backs especially tend to take a little bit more of a gradual progression, but he's remarkably ready to go and has a refined skill set. So like I said, it's going to be really interesting to see how they choose to deploy both of these guys and distribute the snaps moving forward here, because they really do have a complementary pair of running backs.
Andrew DiCecco at DiCecco NFL, looking back at the Eagles' Week 1 win. I want to get your take, too, on the way he utilized his wide receivers. I loved the way he came out and went with Watkins right off the jump. It almost made the defense have to account for him the rest of the day, even though they didn't go back to him at all. I thought that was a really smart plan by Sirianni, and then it allowed the other receivers really to roam and get a lot of good looks, and I really thought that they set the tone with the Watkins off the jump.
Yeah, and that's really what it was good to see. It was very interesting to see how they opened the game. It was Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who they utilized for his blocking ability. And to get the ball 3 times to Quez Watkins, you're right. The Falcons had to account for him right off the bat, and they weren't able to just think of him as a deep threat. They were like, okay, they're getting him the ball, and they're letting him take advantage of his explosive traits in space, which is really how I sort of envision them using Quez Watkins throughout the season. But they're not able to just line up and say, oh, this guy's running, he's going deep, they're going to air it out. They had to now account for him in confined spaces and in the open field, and I think that just opens up so many different things that the offense is able to do. And to start the game off like that, I thought was very astute from Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, all right. Then with the Watkins, obviously, he's the third guy. The second guy is Jalen Reagor, and he didn't have a catch until late in the game. Then they kind of got him involved. And I thought the catch and run after the catch that he showed was one of the better plays of the day for the whole entire offense. I mean, they really faked everybody out. But Reagor, I thought, did a really good job of making that play happen and turn it into a touchdown.
Well, it was a great read by Jalen Hurts, first and foremost. And then I think you saw the acceleration and burst that a player of Jalen Reagor's caliber has and what he can really be in this offense if utilized properly, which we didn't really see last season. Yeah, he wasn't peppered with targets. I don't envision him being a volume receiver, but he does have a lot of explosive ability and big play potential that I think will add another dimension to this offense, and it was nice to see him get involved late in the game. You're going to consistently see a rotation of wide receivers this season. They have a number of different guys that all provide something different. So, outside of Devontae Smith, he's going to be, I believe he played, 50 snaps or something to that effect. Quez Watkins played 34. You're going to see a lot of these guys sort of work in, and not as much of Greg Ward, because he's a very one-dimensional player, and he's always, what you're going to get out of him. But as far as the top guys, Mike, you're going to see a lot of those guys shuffle in and out of the lineups because they can do so many different things.
Ward, by the way, just 16 snaps on the day. So here's a guy who was your leading receiver the last 2 seasons, really, was not a part of the offense hardly at all. Now, how did the way they used the tight ends, I don't know if anything stood out. And then Ertz had the hamstring, but he got 41 snaps. Goddard had 52. But Goddard had a couple extra catches, but I don't know. Did you get a good beat or read on the way they're going to use that, or is this kind of like, hey, it's just going to be a week-to-week thing with those 2 guys?
I think it's going to be more of a week-to-week thing with the tight ends, and I didn't really get to gauge how they were going to use them. They didn't use them creatively or anything, and they didn't really have to, given the way that the game was sort of unfolding. I thought the offense was largely horizontal, and they didn't really get vertical when I thought they had the opportunity to do so and stretch put some stresses on those safeties and Eric Harris and Deron Harmon that aren't necessarily fleet-footed or overly athletic and have a ton of range. But they had the game firmly in hand, so they didn't really need to sort of reveal how they're going to use these guys, moving forward. But we'll see what happens with Zach Ertz with the hamstring. I think they said it was precautionary, but that's something to monitor because obviously they're going to need all hands on deck against this 49ers defense this week.
Yeah, that's for sure. We'll get more into the 49ers later on in the week with Andrew. He's back on Friday for football at 4. I want to flip over to defense. Jonathan Gannon spoke today. I looked at this. The 6 teams that had the least amount of blitzes in the NFL all won, and the Eagles were the 3rd lowest blitzing team in football. Last year, Andrew, you know it. People, they don't blitz enough. Schwartz never blitzes. Well, guess what? Jonathan Gannon didn't blitz either, and it seemed to work. So is that what we expect moving forward, is that they're going to try to get their pressure with their front?
Well, the beauty of having a dominant, healthy, that's the optimal term there, healthy front four. Remember last season, Javon Hargrave had that neck injury, and it took him a while to sort of round into form. I don't even think he played in the first game last season. But just to have a disruptive, healthy, starting four that you can rely on to get home without needing a blitz, like that just adds so much more. It opens up the playbook for what Jonathan Gannon's able to do as far as deploying his coverage, his back end and the second level. I mean, it's just, if these guys are able to stay healthy, like I said, this team's going to win some football games here because they are dominant up front, and particularly on the interior, which I've always been of the belief that interior pressure is puts more stress on an offense than pressure off the edge, because you're not able to step up in the pocket. Even if you're not getting home on those plays, Mike, you're able to sort of get them off their spot. They can't really, it shortens those passing lanes, and it just disrupts the whole flow of the offense. So the fact that the Eagles have a healthy Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, and they look like they're in midseason form, I mean, that's pretty remarkable, and I think that's going to completely open up the playbook for what Jonathan Gannon's able to do.
I'm glad you brought that up, because Hargrave obviously had the 2 sacks, he had the tackle, he had 3 quarterback hits. He seemed to be on the stat sheet. Fletcher Cox didn't show up on the stat sheet at all. But does that mean he didn't play a good game? Because I saw some people saying, I'm starting to be concerned that maybe we're seeing a drop-off from Fletcher Cox. I just thought he was taking on a lot of blocks, and Hargrave was taking advantage of it.
No, and that's where folks need to be careful about reading into the box score, because the box score doesn't reveal all. Fletcher Cox was quite disruptive despite not appearing in the box score, and he created other opportunities. He commands double teams consistently, and when he does so, you're creating different opportunities for your teammates to get home and bring down the quarterback or get behind the line of scrimmage and get those TFLs. So he's so valuable to this defense that you can't measure his impact on a box score or a stat sheet, because he has so much of an impact on the game. Just simply being out there and being available.
Yeah, I want to get to the linebackers too, because early in the game, they're getting run all over, and people are like, wow, these linebackers are a little light. What is the role of the linebacker in this defense now?
Well, I mean, it's sort of tough to determine. It's hard to make that distinction off of one game, especially when the game was so far out of reach. I don't know that they were overly creative in how they were using them, particularly the Sam linebacker. I don't think we have much clarity on that. But, yeah, it's one of those things where the defensive line is going to have to keep these linemen off of from getting to that second level and covering up these linebackers and Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson. Eric Wilson whiffed on quite a few tackles, and I think that obviously him and Singleton are not downhill players. They're a little bit undersized. They have that sideline to sideline range and short area quickness, but they're not someone that can really attack downhill and bring down a running back, especially someone who has so much momentum and low center of gravity as a Mike Davis. So I think that you really need to find – these guys are more coverage-oriented, and I think that right now you have George Kittle coming into Philadelphia, and you're going to really see how they're going to deploy them. I mean, I thought that Kyle Pitts was going to have a field day against this defense, but that didn't quite happen. And when the Eagles' defense is able to pin their ears back when the score gets like that, and they know what you're going to do, it sort of eliminates the element of surprise. So.
Yeah, that was well put. And there's so much, like, the way they handled Ridley and Pitts. Like, when you look back at that and say, how are they able to minimize what Ridley did? He had the 4 catches. I mean, he had a nice little stretch earlier. You're like, oh, they're going after him. They shut him down, and Pitts was a non-factor.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to. If the Eagles are able to get out to an early lead, they're going to be able to, minimize some of the impact of some of the opposition's top players. I mean, it sounds simple, and then why doesn't every team do that? But that's really going to be the Eagles' recipe for success. Then they can pin their ears back and allow their dominant front four, which they've invested significant money and resources in, and let them just get home and it just takes so much pressure off your secondary. So it's kind of, if they can get out to an early lead against the 49ers, they're going to have a fighting chance in this game, and they still very well may. But that's really what it's going to come down to, and that's why you saw Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts become pretty much non-factors, because once they got into a hole, you knew where they were going. The Eagles knew where they were going, and you're able to do everything you can to stop those two guys, and they weren't really worried about Russell Gage or Olamide Zaccheaus or the running game for that matter. So. Cordero Patterson had a couple nice plays and things like that. But, outside of those two guys, they didn't really have any impact players. So it made it very easy to defend once the game got out of reach.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. Lastly, you save the best for last sometimes, but the way Hurts played and the way he played and how different it was in terms of what we saw from that position last year. Didn't turn the ball over, made quick, smart decisions, threw the ball away. And you wonder if they had that kind of play last year, are they a 4-win team?
Yeah, you have to love the command, the poise, the decision-making, the maturity from Jalen Hurts. He really looks like a different player from last season. And he had we've talked ad nauseum about having a full offseason and what that can do for a player's development. And you're starting to see what he's able to fully do, and you're working with the coaching staff that knows how to accentuate the strengths of each player. And I really think that when Jalen Hurts is playing free, he's not pressing. He has an unwavering confidence about him, and I think Nick Sirianni's just finding ways to put him in the best position to be successful. And if he's able to do that consistently throughout the season, you're going to see an offense that's going to put up points in bunches.
Yeah, I know that watching the quarterback position last year, people were pulling their hair out of their head. This game, it was just fun watching it, and it all comes back to I thought Sirianni had such a good game plan, and he really accentuated the positives of his talent that he had on the field.
Yeah, and that's very true to what he's been sort of saying since he got here, right? Sometimes you hear coaches speak, and everything that they say sounds good, but then you see something totally different on Sundays. With Nick Sirianni, he's driven home the element of competition and accentuating the players, putting them in position to be successful, and really sort of tailoring the game plan to his personnel instead of tailoring the personnel to his system, so to speak, which is what the previous regime did. And I think what you're seeing now is, this is just one game, but you're seeing a cohesive unit, and guys are putting in successful positions. And I think that you're going to see different roles for different guys. And of course, Watkins is going to have his stuff, and you're going to see Kenny Gainwell have his packages. And it's very exciting to see how he chooses to utilize these guys in the coming weeks.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. He's back on Friday. He'll give you his thoughts on the Eagles and 49ers in that one. Couple key injuries already for the Niners. Remember, the Eagles beat San Francisco last year as one of their 4 wins. That was a Sunday night game out in San Francisco. Alex Singleton had that pick 6 return for a touchdown. Nick Mullins was the trigger man for San Francisco. He, of course, and
Brandon Ayuk had that 35-yard run where he leaped over Marcus Epps and made him a poster. So
right,
we'll
and
see
Ayuk is essentially out of their lineup now, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past Kyle Shanahan to reveal him and utilize him against the Eagles this week. He seems to have that Bill Belichick approach where you might see one running back this week or this player this week, and they kind of bases him off of matchups. I'm still not entirely ready to write off Brandon Ayuk. I have a funny feeling he's going to have a prominent role this week.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, back Friday. Thanks, pal.
No problem. See you then.
Man, Andrew's great. As always, we'll talk to him on Friday.